Here.
Okay.
All right, everybody. Welcome back. Oops, hold on. Let's get this thing dialed in. There we go. All right, everybody. Welcome back to the DK Project. With us today, the legend in the voiceover world, Mr. Neil Ross. How are you, sir?
Oh, go on with yourself. I'm good. Thank you. Nice to chat with you.
Are you, where are we finding you? Are you in California with all the heat wave?
Yes, we've got that, and we also unfortunately have a large number of fires. None of them anywhere relatively close to me, thank goodness. But a lot of folks are in peril, and it's a bad situation.
I was just out I was in San Diego the last couple days, dropping the kid off at college, and oh, cats, is that hot? We get
What
hot in Minnesota, but
what college?
San Diego State.
That's where I would have gone if
You would have made it that far?
Well, I had this mad desire to be on the radio, and I thought, if anybody had said, well, you absolutely must have a 4-year degree if you ever hope to speak into a microphone professionally, I would have somehow figured out how to make that happen. But most people, and they were telling me the truth, essentially they said, radio's a meritocracy. If you've got the sound, they could care less if you went to college or where you went to college. It's trivia to them. And I thought, well, since I don't absolutely have to go, and I really detested school, high school anyway. I didn't realize college would be very different. I thought it would just be the 13th grade. I didn't want any more of that stuff. But had I gone to college, I would have gone to San Diego State. And I actually lived in San Diego on and off for about 10 years. Lovely place. And the heat you experienced is highly unusual. Normally, they have a very nice climate.
Well, and we, boy, I tell you, I saw it all. There was some weird stuff going on that I'm not, because normally we've been down there a couple times, viewing the school and doing this or that. But it was a different experience. But she's there. She's fine. Everything's going in the right direction until they come down with the virus. And then she's got to come back home, I suppose. I don't know.
Yeah, I really feel for younger people,
Weird time, that's for sure. So
at my age, being trapped in the house is almost a positive. But I think, boy, if I was 19, I'd just be wanting to blow my brains out. I can't do anything.
That's the benefit. They're coping with it like, this is their normal now. So she's actually handled everything really well, like to the point where I'm kind of waiting for something bad to happen because, she's actually been really mature about the whole thing because it has been a whirlwind of experience. It's like everything's different. But anyway,
at least they have, communication. They've got their phones.
Yeah.
They've got their computers. And
when I was leaving her there across the country, that I don't know how you'd get through it without being able to text.
Yeah.
Like, when I was young and we could only have a phone,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I talk to her too often to deal with a phone. Texting is just the way of life for these people.
And well, when I was 19, well, I was out of the house by then. But normal experience is one black phone that's rotary, and it's in the living room, and Mom, can I use the phone? All right, but don't stay on too long. And then they're listening to everything you say. It's like,
it was a different time.
Young people have no concept.
So right out of high school, did you go right into radio?
Yeah, I went to a broadcasting school in New York City. And then shortly after graduating, I landed a job that only lasted for 2 weeks, but I had a tremendous lucky break. And just as the guy was getting ready to fire me, I got a much better offer to go to Salt Lake City, Utah. And so off I went, and I spent the first year on the air in Salt Lake City. And
just spinning records, or were you doing a morning show, or what were you doing?
Spinning records. They started me out at night and they put me on midday. And I think towards the end, I was doing afternoon drive. And I was also doing a tremendous amount of work in the production studio, creating commercials.
Oh.
which over the long haul of my career, I finally realized that's what I was good at. I wasn't that good of a disc jockey. I was okay, and I had a few bright moments, but boy, people would always say, boy, that commercial you did just knocked my socks off, or that promo you created was so dramatic. And I began to realize, really, this is what I'm good at.
Yeah.
But at the time, radio management had no appreciation for the poor devils slaving away in the production studio. All they thought about were the superstar DJs. So I was getting no love and no money. And I began to wonder who these people were who I heard voicing national television commercials and voicing the national radio commercials that came into the station on tape from the big agencies, and I'd have to dub them from the tape to a cartridge. And I began to I recognized some of these voices. I didn't know their names at the time, but I said, no, that's that guy. He's got another job, you know? And I started to wonder who these people were. Who voiced cartoons, who narrated documentaries. And I had this working theory that they were on-camera actors moonlighting, making a few bucks on the side doing this. But then one glorious day in 1970, I was having a conversation with a record promoter from Los Angeles, and he uttered the term voiceovers. And I said, voiceovers, what's that? And he said, oh, you know, commercials, cartoons, promos, voiceovers. I said, you mean that's a business unto itself? And he said, oh, yeah. And you could make a living just doing that? And he said, make a living? And he mentioned a guy named Danny Dark, who you may not be familiar with. He's no longer with us. But he was one of the most successful voiceover guys in the 60s and 70s. He was the voice of General Motors. He was the voice of General Foods. He was the voice of NBC. He says, Danny Dark lives in a mansion in Beverly Hills, make a living, you know? And I thought, man, you know, I really didn't focus on the money. I never have, you know, if it comes, great, and I'll take it.
Yeah.
But to me, it was, I had this passion to get in this business and mix it up with these people and hopefully be successful enough at it to just make a living. That's all I wanted to do, because I had begun to realize that I was only using 30-40% of what I had to offer in radio. But I thought, this voiceover, if I sat down and tried to invent a job for myself, I couldn't come up with anything much better.
Yeah.
That would best utilize my weird little bag of tricks. So it took me another 10 years to make anything happen, but I eventually did get to LA, and I did break into the business, as they say.
But you do a lot of characters, right? Like cartoon. Is that your sweet spot? Where have you found your favorite place in, you know, when you're in the booth? What's your favorite thing to do?
Well, I've got to hit the Wayback Machine again. I always was fascinated by voices and accents. We didn't have a television set when I was growing up, and it was mostly the radio, and I would tune around, and I had no interest in music at that point. I would just listen to the voices. Sometimes I didn't even really understand what they were talking about, but I was fascinated by the deep ones and the high ones and people who had funny accents. And I would, in the privacy of my room, I would try to reproduce what I heard. And it became almost like
just by ear, you kind of taught yourself how to do that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I wasn't even thinking of teaching or something that I could turn into a profession. It was just like a hobby. You know, some kids build model planes, and I sat in my room and tried to sound like an Irishman. And, you know, my father thought he was just, you know, my kid sits in a room and talks to himself, you know, and in a way I can't blame him. That's what I was doing, but it did have some purpose in the end. So anyway, long story short, I got seduced by rock and roll music, wanted to be a part of that, had no musical talent, stumbled into the idea of being a disc jockey, started to do that. But there really wasn't any way for me to use these voices as a DJ. I tried. Management would discourage me. It was an era where they liked the deep voice guys who talk, real fast and okay, gang, blah, blah, blah. And I'm there doing a duck voice, and they're going, that's silly. Don't do that. Stop that. Sometimes I could do a voice or an accent in a commercial or a promo, but I was using very little of that. And one of the things that turned the tide for me was I got a job with a friend of mine. We were programming a couple of Mexican FM stations that were broadcasting into San Diego in English. And we stumbled into the idea of creating this comedy series, which we did. And we had a marvelously talented woman. She played all the women in the show. And then the guy I worked with, he basically played the lead character. And I played everybody else. Somewhere between 15 and 20 different characters, sustained over, I think we did 75 or 80 episodes.
Wow.
The thing was called The Adventures of the O.B. Ranger. O.B. stands for Ocean Beach, which is a community in San Diego, where at the time, it was alleged that's where most of the pot dealers lived.
Ooh.
And now I have no idea if this was true or not.
Yeah.
But the OB Ranger was this bumbling, inept narc who bore a strange resemblance to the Lone Ranger. And he had an Indian companion. And, but the point of this, you can still find a couple of episodes on YouTube. Somebody put them up there if anybody's curious. But after a year of that, having created these characters, sustained them, played them through a 75, 80 episode run, I began to listen to the Saturday morning cartoon shows. And I would think to myself, I'm about as good as they are, I think.
Yeah.
There was nobody around to tell me if this was a delusion or not. I had to just go up there and find out the hard way. But, I would vacillate between, yeah, I could do that. Nah, if I shot, they'd kick me out. I'm not as good as they are. But eventually I summoned up my courage, got to LA and got into animation. And yeah, animation was a huge part of my career. You take that out of my career and I don't have much of a career. I mean, I've done many other things. Very proud of having narrated 23, 4, 5 episodes of Nova for public television. And 1 year I was the announcer on the Oscars. And, all of that I'm proud of. But animation that's the first thing I broke through on. And it was very, very good to me.
It had to be a lot different back then. Like I've been in it now for about a year and a half. And it's all online. It's all, audition here, send a file, audition here, where you had to go audition for people because there's no way to communicate it over the air. There's no way to send anything electronically. You had to go with a tape or a reel and drop it off or whatever, right?
Well, yeah, the demo, as we call them, all that would do is get you through the door. It wasn't like somebody, I heard a voice on your demo and that's what I want. They would just listen for range and versatility and they'd say, all right, you're versatile enough. You'll come up with something we like. So come and audition for this part. And yeah, you're right. I suffer the same frustration. They send me copy attached to an email, and I record it to the best of my abilities and send it in. But in those days, you were reading sometimes for the people who were going to do the hiring, and sometimes for people maybe just one rung below them.
Okay.
And you could, we used to sometimes audition with one eye on the copy and one eye on the booth. And you try to read the body language, is what I'm doing hitting a nerve, or should I abandon ship and go to something else?
Oh, wow.
and what I find is, it's like that old game of telephone. I don't know if you played that when you were a kid.
Yeah.
You get in a circle, somebody whispers a secret, and it goes around the circle. By the time it gets to the other side, it's completely different from
Exactly.
what it started out as. And I think that happens with auditioning. By the time it goes through the various layers of whoever's holding the audition and then down to the casting people, by the time it gets to you, the instructions are probably nothing like what they want. I call that kind of auditioning, trying to hit the invisible dartboard.
But
But
you've got quite a list of characters and shows, and I mean you not just auditioning, you're doing all this stuff. You've been in a lot of stuff. And so did it just snowball? Like once you got that first animation deal that you're then, you're known for being able to do all these voices?
well, I was very lucky. I got I got in and I had a couple of regular deals with Hanna-Barbera
Wow.
and some other companies. This was the Saturday morning stuff. And
Yeah.
there wasn't that much of it, to be honest with you. And they didn't do that many episodes. Most shows did 13 a year.
Wow. Was it
Well,
competitive when you were doing that?
it was and it wasn't. It was a complete 180 from today. Today, everybody and his Uncle Steve thinks they can do voiceovers.
Yeah.
So you're competing, and we've got the internet. You can send MP3s anywhere. So you're competing against the whole damn country.
Yeah. The world.
When I got there, you had to live in LA because that's where they recorded this stuff.
Yeah.
And there was a relatively small talent pool. And the buyers were more than happy to use these people over and over and over again. I mean, they were very good. A guy like Dawes Butler was fantastic. Of course, you use him over and over again. He's brilliant.
Yeah.
But it made it tough for us younger, and I put that in quotes because I was almost 40 when I broke in. But back at that time, most of the big hitters were in their 60s. So to them, I was a kid. I'd go to auditions and, hey, kid, how's it going? Well, let me tell you, my boy, here's what and I'm 40 years old.
That's good because I'm in my 40s and I'm gonna break through.
So what you had to do was wait for the time when Dawes couldn't be there for some reason. They go, all right, well, let's get this kid in here, see what he can do, this kind of thing. But then, and this was an astonishingly lucky thing for me, and I didn't even really realize it until retrospect, but Ronald Reagan got elected president. And I must confess, I'm not a fan of Ronald Reagan, but he did me a huge solid. He appointed a guy to run the FCC who was into deregulation. And they did a lot of deregulation. And part of what they deregulated was children's television. And it suddenly became possible to make money by creating a syndicated television cartoon and running it on the independent channels in the afternoons after school.
What was it before that?
Just Saturday morning and a few on Sunday morning. And there was little or no syndication. Because you couldn't really make that much money. They had so many restrictions on the advertising.
Huh.
But when Mr. Reagan's pal did away with that, suddenly now we can make a buck doing this stuff.
Right.
And we're not recording any 13 episodes, Daddy. We're going Monday through Friday. And to go to 13 weeks without a repeat, we got to do 65.
Whoa, cha-ching.
Yeah, indeed. In fact, the first big series I got into was Voltron.
Voltron.
Defender of the Universe. And we did 125 of those. Yeah.
How long would it take you to do an episode? Because they're 30-minute shows?
Mm-hmm.
And so how long does it take you to do, is it if you're pumping out one a day, I mean, if they're showing one show a day, how long is it taking you as one or multiple voices in the show to put a show together? Like, how long does that take?
Well, Voltron was unusual in that they had purchased already existing footage from Japan, thought about translating it and just overdubbing.
Okay.
And then for various reasons that wasn't working. So they created original episodes and then had to hunt through the footage to find pictures that fit the story they'd written. This had to be, I had no involvement in this. It sounds like, three-dimensional chess, but somehow they did it. Wow. The point is we never saw a frame of picture. We saw nothing. I saw a drawing, I guess, of my character. That's about it. You would be handed a script, and to the right of the line you did would be a time, 6.5 seconds. That was the amount of time the character's lips moved. So they would accept 6.4 or 6.6 or 6.5, but you had to hit those times. And of course, the longer speeches, like 23.5, well, that's you're 27. Can you speed it up? Oh, that's 21. That's too fast. Let's slow it down a little. Well, that's 26. That's too long. And it's,
Come on.
I mean, it's sort of hard to act to a stopwatch, but that's what we had to do. So we could not work as a cast because it was just too cumbersome. So we would come in and do our individual lines. I would show up, Peter Cullen would leave, I would do my part, I would leave, Michael Bell would come in and do his. But that was just Voltron. And that, as I recall, it would take 1 to 2 hours for me to do what I had to do. Generally speaking, it really depends on the director. Some directors move it. The late lamented Gordon Hunt was wonderful. He was the guy who directed all the Hanna-Barbera stuff. He kept it moving. He a lot of energy. I don't think I was ever beyond 2 hours with him, and usually a lot less than that. Wally Burr, who directed Transformers and G.I. Joe and a number of others, he, on the other hand, would sometimes take 8 hours
For one show?
to do, 22 minutes of animation. And we eventually there was a strike, and the big sticking point on the strike is we want a 4-hour session. We do not. This is really getting into inside baseball, but at one time, animation was just a letter that was attached to the big Screen Actors Guild on-camera contract. And it said, you'll work the same hours as the on-camera people, which was 8, without it going into overtime. Well, on-camera is incredibly time-consuming, and there's a reason that they need them for all that time. But to record 22 minutes of animation shouldn't take 8 flippin' hours.
Wow.
But we would rehearse for 4 hours, and then break for lunch, and then come back and record this thing for another 4 hours. And we just finally put our foot down and said, if you can't get 22 minutes of animation in 4 hours, you need to find another line of work. And oh my God, you should have heard the producers screaming and yelling, if this 4-hour session thing happens, the end of Western civilization will happen. This is just, we can't do this. We got it, and they've been producing them in 4 hours or less ever since. I mean, it's not rocket science.
How many characters did you do on Voltron?
Other than incidental characters, I was basically 2, Keith and Pidge. Okay. Keith, if you remember, was the young guy, and as the years roll by, it gets harder and harder to sound like a teenager.
And then Pidge was this weird voice I came up with.
In a moment of panic, I was new to the genre, and I kept waiting for someone to go, this guy is just a jumped-up disc jockey. Get him out of here. Get a real actor.
Oh, you bluff.
So I showed up to do Voltron thinking I was just going to play Keith, and they shoved this picture under my nose and said, what do you got for this guy?
No, I came up with this ridiculous voice.
Which they bought.
Wow.
And then I find out he's a regular. He's going to be in every episode. And then I was stuck with him. But just those 2. And then when they did they brought the show back, Voltron, the Next Dimension or the Fifth Dimension, I've forgotten. And I played a character called Amalgamus. Who was sort of a robot, as I recall.
Wow. So where'd you go from there then?
Well, it all sort of, as I say, when these regulations were changed, everybody started wanting to do these 65-episode shows. So at the same time that I was recording Voltron, I was also doing G.I. Joe and Transformers. It all happened over the same time period. I for about a year or more, I did nothing but animation. I remember I went to a place where they did casting for commercials. I hadn't been there in a long time, and the lady who ran it said, oh, we finally got you in here. We've been trying to get you in here, but you're always busy. That was another reason that we were mad about the 8-hour session. We missed out on other stuff because we were trapped in a room with Wally Burr. And I don't want to sound ungrateful, but, no job in voiceovers is going to make you wealthy or even reasonably well off. You have to you have to do a lot of things, and combined, they hopefully add up to a nice chunk of change. But if you're booked, if I'm booked out for the day, stuck with Wally Burr, and somebody calls up and says, "Boy, we'd sure love Neil to do a national Ford commercial today." "Oh, well, I'm sorry, he's not available." "Oh, well, we'll just get someone else."
Yeah.
And then there's the auditions you miss out on. So it really was, it was costing us money in a way. And as I say, and Wally, he's not with us anymore, but he's more than entitled to hover over my shoulder, the ghost of Wally Burr, and said, "There's only 2 shows you've done that are revered and remembered and that people hold conventions for and fly you there to sign autographs. And those are the 2 shows I voice directed. So maybe there was a reason that we took 8 hours, kid."
Mm.
And, and I wouldn't begrudge him that if he,
Yeah. Wow. That's awesome. But G.I. Joe, that was big. That was a long time too, right? That's a long run.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we were up into 80 episodes, somewhere in there, when they finally took it off to Canada. And I don't know what happened to it after that, but yeah.
So if you do a character like in G.I. Joe or Voltron or whatever, and they take it to Canada, they just find someone else to do it, or what happens then?
In some cases, they may have replaced us with sound-alikes, but you got to remember that show, they were always creating new characters because they wanted to sell more action figures.
Oh, right.
So, generally, the Canadians were playing new characters.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
And then you went on to a pile of other stuff. What was some of the more popular ones that you've done? I see you've now started doing some video game stuff. What are you most known for if you had to pick?
Well, I think most people remember me as Keith in Voltron, Shipwreck in G.I. Joe, Springer in Transformers, Hook, Slag, and Bone Crusher too. And then the other one, I'm just going by the characters people reference at conventions when I do them. The other one that's very popular happened in the mid-90s. And that was Spider-Man, the animated series. And I was Norman Osborn and the Green Goblin.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And people remember that. But there were a lot of other shows along the way that for one reason or another didn't catch on. And
I see you did the animated series of Rambo.
Yes, yeah. That actually was quite successful.
Did you get to play the man himself or what?
Yes. Oh, yes. And that's a funny story that I tell in this here book that I have wrote, Vocal Recall, A Life in Radio and Voiceovers, available now at Amazon. And the best place to go is my website, neilbook.com, and you'll see all the links there, neilbook.com. It's available in print. It's available in Kindle. It's available. There's an audio version. Audible has the audio version.
Oh, did you do that yourself?
Yeah, yes, I won a highly competitive audition for the chance to voice the book. And yes, I do it myself. But anyway, the Rambo story, as I say in the book, a number of my more successful animation jobs have grown out of failed impressions. And this was one of those cases. I went in to audition for the part of Rambo, and they said, "Now, we do not want a Sylvester Stallone sound-alike." I said, got it. All right, roll the tape. And then I start doing this kind of thing here, and I'm doing it. And they're going, that's great. And I said, I thought you didn't want a Sylvester Stallone sound. That doesn't sound like Sylvester Stallone, they said. And I said, you're absolutely right. It doesn't. Because I'm no dummy. And essentially I got the job with this voice that I thought was an impression of Sylvester Stallone, but they didn't. I was just trying to make them laugh,
Yeah.
Soften them up before I hit them with my good stuff. And
How long did that one run for?
I'm not entirely sure, but judging by some of the checks that arrived, it did quite well.
Nice.
And we did 65 of those.
Wow.
Rambo, the Force of Freedom, I think the show was called.
65 episodes. That's a lot.
Yes, yeah, it is. It is.
What about the Dukes?
Yeah, the Dukes. That's going back. That was a Hanna-Barbera show, and they used to do this kind of thing. They'd cut a deal with, a live-action television show to do an animated version.
Yeah.
They did that with Mork and Mindy. They did that with a bunch of shows, and one of their gimmicks would be it would be completely different from the on-camera version of the show. They would have the characters go around the world. So that's what they did with the two characters in the Dukes of Hazzard, had them traveling around the world. And Hanna-Barbera knew that I had a plethora of accents in my kit bag. So I think I was in almost every episode.
Oh, really?
But I did not actually meet the two Dukes of Hazzard. I met the two guys who briefly replaced them when they went on strike.
Oh.
So
did they voice those characters themselves?
Yes. But I have a feeling when they settled with the other guys, they came in and replaced whatever these guys had done. I don't know.
Right. Wow.
But I only did the one session with them. The rest of the time, Hanna-Barbera brought me in, and I just did the lines in the clear.
So you were doing all the foreigners that they were running into.
Mm-hmm, yeah, the Greek on the restaurant, this kind of thing. And but I got to meet Denver Pyle.
Ooh.
You know him?
Yeah.
A wonderful character actor. He was in Bonnie and Clyde, and and he was so nice. I'm the odd man out. They all know each other, and I come in and I'm just kind of standing there, and he got up out of his chair and he walked over and he shook my hand and he said, "Hello there, I'm Denver Pyle." And I said, "Oh, how nice to meet you. I'm Neil Ross." And but I thought, what a nice thing to do. Everybody else was just ignoring me, but he
nice.
Yeah, nice man. At least judging by that brief exposure I had with him.
Oh, cool. What about Darkwing Duck?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I think I had sort of a semi-regular part in that.
Yeah.
My memory, the only thing I remember is how impressed I was with Jim Cummings, who played the Darkwing Duck character. He came into the business a little bit after I did. And I'd sort of seen him at auditions, oh, this guy, who's this guy? I haven't seen him before. And then somebody told me, oh, that's Jim Cummings. Oh, he's incredibly talented. And so I hated him immediately. But no, I was so impressed with what he did when I got in there. I thought, wow, this guy really is good. Wow. And he was and is, yeah.
So you continue to go and just kind of hone your own characters and make it up as you go along, or is there some kind of training that you did to help you along the way? I know right now there's 1,000,001 coaches out there that can help you with anything, but it kind of sounds like you kind of went your own way and did your own thing and figured it out.
Yeah, I think I was pretty close when I got to LA. I remember I took a meeting with an agent, which was really lucky. We had a mutual friend. Most agents say, just send a demo, and if we're interested, you'll hear from us. Well, what if you're not interested? You won't hear from us, which doesn't help. You need somebody to say, this is your strength, this is your weakness, this is what you need to work on, but it's very tough to get that. But I did have a meeting with this guy. He hated my commercial stuff. You sound like a blankety blank radio announcer. Well, what's wrong with that? Well, that was a whole thing I had to learn. But then he played my character reel and he brightened up and he said, this is really good. This is really good. It's hopeless though. You'll never get in. Hanna-Barbera, they hire the same 5 people over and over again. You'll never make it. Well, he was wrong about that, but that gave me some hope. But I took some acting classes, when I got to LA, and I was horrible. Then when I got the G.I. Joe part, I really, for the first couple of years I was in the business, I alluded to it earlier. I kept waiting for somebody to go, this guy's just a disc jockey, get rid of him. And Michael Bell, who was sort of the Clark Gable of voiceovers in those days, just a phenomenally successful guy, said, I'm giving animation workshops, and I said, sign me up.
Nice.
So I would go to his workshop at night, and then the next morning we'd be at Wally's recording an episode of G.I. Joe. So I was sort of learning on the job, as it were. And Michael would teach us something, and I'd use it the next day.
Wow, that's cool though. Hands-on, right in the fire.
And that's about all the formal training.
Really?
Michael's workshop and that little acting class I took.
This has been your career. This is all what you've done since high school.
Yeah, in one form or another, as I say, just for my own personal enjoyment. And then when we did that comedy show down in San Diego, that had some purpose to it. I just somehow, if there's a story and my character is in that story, I know how to say the lines. It's, I understand the story. And
so is that an acquired taste, or have you just always been able to do that?
I guess I've always been able to do that. And maybe everybody is, I don't know. Although it's the strangest thing. If somebody were to take some of what I've said today and type it up and ask someone to read it, suddenly it would not sound like me because they are reading this thing off a piece of paper.
Right.
We don't need, the old joke, the actor, what's my motivation? And the director says, scale plus 10, you idiot. But really, you can't act without understanding the story, without what is motivating my character. Why is my character saying this? And as soon as you lock into why they're saying it, you know how to say the line. You know what the emphasis should be.
And I, when I got out of high school, I was, destined for radio and voiceover. And then they told me what they're going to pay. And I'm like, well, that ain't going to work. So I went and found another path. But now that I've come back to it, that's the hardest thing to convey to people who think that voiceovers just get on the microphone and you're recording, you're doing commercials. It's not. The acting portion of it and the making it sound like your own words portion of it, really hard to do. It's not for the faint of heart at all. It's hardcore, and it a lot of, like, I do a lot of podcasting and off the hip stuff where I'm running my mouth about words that, my words, my script. But when you're reading someone else's words and the way they've written it and the way they want you to say it, very hard to do. I would encourage anyone who's, thinking that this is an easy world to take a run at that, because it's not at all easy to make it sound your own. Especially in a voiceover world, you don't have, the actor, they can't look at you. They can't see your gestures to help you out to sell what you're doing. It's all in your voice, especially when you're doing animation, same thing. You got to make these characters sound like they're doing what they're doing, and people can't see you. It's all on your pipes to get it done, which is very difficult to do. So the fact that you've done it for the period of time that you have is commendable. It's really, it's really not as easy as people think it is. That's for sure.
Most people think you come up with some sort of a zany voice, and that's it. But now that zany voice has to act.
Well, and on top of that, you have to be able to do that same, half Rambo impersonation, for 62 episodes. That's a lot, considering you just came up with this voice, and now you have to make it act and continue to do it over and over and over again. It's really it's an art, and you've obviously got the keys to the combination, because you're nailing it, man. You have done a lot of stuff. What are you currently working on? Anything?
Oh, probably my biggest claim to fame at the moment is I'm the announcer for Press Your Luck, which is a summer replacement series on ABC.
Okay.
Sunday nights at 9 o'clock, starring the lovely Elizabeth Banks.
Ooh, nice.
And I'm also the voice of the dreaded Whammy.
Oh, are you really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that what that press of your luck show is when they're trying to avoid the whammy?
Yeah. No whammies, no whammies, no whammies. And then I come on, only I'm sped up. It could be Winston Churchill, it's.
Yeah. Wow. How did you go from characters to announcing a game show?
This is actually the first game show I've ever done. I used to wonder about them. And I was told, and this was true at the time, that back in the 80s and 90s, the announcer also had to do the warm-up of the crowd.
In the beginning?
I thought, that's not for me. I don't have that kind of personality.
Yeah.
I can do the announcing fine, but...
Okay, where you from, folks? Oh, they're from Kansas. Well, here's a joke about Kansas.
It's not... And I've worked on a bunch of sitcoms over the years. And again, they have live audiences, and there's a warm-up guy, usually a guy. And I thought, what a thankless job. I mean, anytime they stop taping, he's got to jump in and then keep the energy up. And the minute they're ready to roll again, he's in the middle of a joke, and they go, all right, shut up, cut it, we're ready.
Wow.
And I thought, oh, God, this is not for me. Anyway. Turns out that this is not the case anymore, that the announcer can just be the announcer. And this audition came into my inbox, and I did it. And to my amazement, they said, you're the guy.
Well, and so then are you in studio when that's happening, or do you get it afterwards and add it after? Or are you...
The first season I was there. The second season, they chose to have me do it in post-production, which saved me a lot of driving, but I kind of like going to those things, It's like we're putting on a show.
Yeah, right.
And there's craft services, and this is fun,
So is this the second season of it then?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
How many of those do you do if it's the summer?
The first season we did 8. This year we did 13.
Wow. Oh.
And we'll see where that takes us. I don't know how they're going to do a game show under the current conditions, because to me, the audience is critical.
Yeah.
But if you can't jam a bunch of people into seats, what the hell are you going to do? But, these show business people are endlessly inventive. And, I'm sort of looking at what they're doing now I have no idea when this will air, but as we record this, final night of the Democratic Convention is looming just ahead. And I'm quite impressed with what they've managed to come up with.
New world.
Without, an arena filled with screaming people wearing silly hats.
It will become the new norm? Like, think of how much money they're saving by doing all this through technology.
I think, there are going to be some profound changes in not just show business, but everything.
Yeah.
Even in a best case scenario where the vaccine is invented and it works and everybody takes it, even then there's going to be some things that have changed and won't go back to the way they were before. That's my opinion.
I'll be curious to see how they spin it off tonight and do the big hoorah, because it's just a different world. And I personally kind of like it. I like that people are wearing masks when they're putting your food together, and I like when I got an extra seat next to me on the plane. Obviously it's a huge inconvenience for a lot of these companies who are losing a ton of money, but it does work out nice, in some effects, that I hope that once the pandemic is over, that they'll keep some of these cleanliness rituals going, ongoing.
One of the things I think that industry, business is in the middle of discovering is that you don't have to make people come somewhere to do their job necessarily. You don't have to fly and stay in a hotel and all the rest of it. You can do it like we're doing it.
Yeah. Well,
on Zoom, and maybe and
get killed, but it'll recover eventually.
And LA traffic was so awful. And one of the few nice things about the pandemic is you can jump on a freeway and get somewhere in a reasonable length of time. Of course, once you get there, you can't do anything.
Well, and I was just in San Diego, and you hop on something it's 7 miles away, but it's 15 to 20 minutes to get there. You know, where I'm I'm west of Minneapolis, 15 to 20 minutes, I've gone through 2 towns by that time. You know what I mean? It's just, even when it's good, it's really not that good. And that's San Diego. LA's got to be just ridiculous. So I couldn't imagine when it's bad. But you're probably getting a little bit of breathing room right now. Have you gone anywhere, or are you hunkered down?
I'm pretty much hunkered down. Once in a while, I need to go somewhere for some reason, and it's just such a breeze. That freeway is not wide open, but it's moving.
Yeah.
I mean, back in the good old days, from about 2 p.m. on, heading south on the 405, you're just looking at some guy's bumper and stop and start and stop and start.
I couldn't do it. That and you guys got a homeless problem. It's it's crazy. I was shocked. I thought it was bad, but this was crazy.
And you were down in San Diego.
Yeah. It's got to be 10 times in LA.
Yeah, it's most unfortunate.
That's crazy. Well, so when did the book come out? Is the book new?
No, the book's been out maybe a year and a half, something like that. And I just keep doing appearances like this one and reminding people that it's there. And it's a lot of what we've been talking about. It's basically my professional life. There's a wee bit in there about my personal life, but 98% of it is what happened to me professionally. So if you were a fan of any of these shows like Voltron or Transformers or G.I. Joe, I talk about the recording sessions and the actors I worked with and some of the funny stuff that happened. And
wow. It's called Vocal Recall.
Vocal Recall. Yeah, that was the working title. And I would say, now I'm going to come up with something better. But for now, that's the working title. And I never did come up with anything better. So
wrong with it. That's a nice sized book. You must have to say.
I was going to say, if all else fails and this book bores the hell out of you, it's a great doorstop.
Yeah.
So you can't go wrong, really.
Win-win.
Exactly.
It's a win-win. Well, Mr. Neil Ross, we can't thank you enough for the time. We're going to wrap up here with a few final thoughts. We want everybody to go over to neilbook.com to get that book, Vocal Recall. That's neilbook.com. What else you got going on, sir? Is there social media? You do any of that kind of stuff?
Not a whole lot. I'm on Facebook. You can track me down there, and that's really about it. I'm kind of a Luddite with this stuff, and it seems like every week I open a newspaper and some clown has written something stupid on Twitter and lost their entire career and their life. And, to me, walking around with a cell phone with Twitter on it is like carrying a hand grenade around in your pocket.
So true.
What seems like a clever idea at 2 a.m. turns into utter disaster by 10 o'clock the next day. I keep thinking about that woman. I forget what she tweeted, but it was something she shouldn't have. And she got on a plane to, I think it's South Africa or somewhere. And by the time the plane landed, she'd already been fired.
Oh, wow. No, I didn't hear about that. I do friends who are pretty, big in the industry. And they're like, the minute I have a drink, I get rid of the phone. Like I can't.
Yeah.
Risky, because you're right, it could destroy everything very fast, but we'll direct them towards Facebook to track you down, see what you're up to, and then everybody can go over and check out the game show to see if they're getting any are they whammies? Is that what it is? Whammies.
Whammies. Yeah, actually whammies is what you don't want.
You don't want.
Yeah.
Good luck,
because when the whammy comes, he takes all your stuff away.
It's over. It's the end. Yeah. Well, Neil, we can't thank you enough, man. I will check in on you somewhere down the road and see what you're up to, but it sounds like you're staying busy. I like it. Keeping things rolling along. So we thank you, and we'll check in with you later on. Sounds good. Thanks, Darren. I really appreciate it. Good talking to you. Let me turn that off. Let me turn this off. Let me turn this off. Now, generally what I like to do